Hey, what's going on, everyone? My name is Matt Jarbo. This is $3 Theater, and this is my breakdown of the Orville Season 2, Episode 3, Home. A bittersweet episode in its entirety, but one I'm going to go through and give you guys my thoughts and my opinions in a greater context than my other review, which is available on $3 Reviews, link below in the video description. Now, this is going to be a spoiler-filled breakdown, so if you haven't seen the show already, go and watch it and come back, or consider yourself warned. Now, this episode, as I said, is bittersweet, all because it's about Alara Kitan, and who doesn't love Alara Kitan? She's Kelly's BFF. She's a security chief on the Orville, and she is a great character and one that a lot of people ultimately relate to. Kind of a lovelorn, lost soul in space, trying to find herself, find out who she is, as well as be there for her new family. But this time around, things aren't always what they seem, at least with how her body reacts to being in Earth's gravity for so long, considering the fact that, remember, she comes from Xelaya, which her species reacts to Earth's gravity by basically becoming invulnerable. There was the running gag in the first season all about how she can open up a can or jar of pickles, or she could bust open a door. Here, after losing an arm wrestling match with Isaac and he breaks her arm, we discover that she's suffering from gravity sickness. And the only cure essentially is to go back to her home planet in order to spend time there to basically recuperate. And this could take any bit of time from a week to a couple months to a couple years to never. And of course, she's worried because she belongs on the Orville. She wants to get back to it as soon as humanly possible. And she ultimately really doesn't like being around her parents, who have always looked down on her because she's effectively the runt of the litter. She is not a philosopher. She's not a teacher, a doctor. She is very much her own self. And that's always been something that she has fought for. At least for acceptance and love, and something she's never gotten from her family, at least in return. At least from her father, with whom she very much has issues with, played wonderfully by Robert Picardo. So when she gets dropped off, she, is in a wheelchair, and they're kind of coddling her, and they're trying to talk her into staying. She opts to basically throw a little bit of snark back in their face, and they decide to go to the beach house for the off season in order to rebond, to reunify the family, as well as just kind of get away. So when they get to the beach house, they realize that there's no one else on the island, apparently, but Alara sees a cabin with a light on. And she's curious about it, but no one else should be there. The next day, a couple of people magically appear. And this would be Candace and Florada, apparently another couple that are deciding to spend time at the beach house in the off season. And they're a little bit afraid because somebody has apparently come and broke into their home, didn't take anything, but moved a few items around, and they're just a little bit on the spooked side, which totally makes sense. This is where Alara goes right back into security chief mode, wanting to investigate, very much wanting to solve this crime, make herself useful, and prove herself to her parents. Her and her sister head off towards the caretaker's house because he's not returning any phone calls. They discover that his stuff is still there, but he's nowhere to be found. They return to the home that night, and, basically we find out that Candace and Florada are not who they appear to be, and that goes from kind of a lighthearted discussion at dinner to a full-blown home invasion with the intent on forcing her father to basically renounce a study he had put out, a paper he had published about a disease and the cure for it, the vaccine for it. And then the reason why they're doing this is because he had disproven their son's anti-vaccine approach to this particular problem. And as a result, it destroyed his career, and basically he took his own life. At the same time this is going on, Alara regains her strength, fights them off, ends up taking both out, while Ed is wounded outside of the beach house after he discovers a cure for her and tries to get it to her as fast as possible. Ed is then rescued by her father, and when they go back to the Orville, Alara at that point decides that she is going to basically leave. She's going to leave. She's going to go back to Xelaya and spend time with her family, spend time with her father, and regain some of that connection that she's spent her entire life longing for. And the end of the episode shows a very hearty goodbye from all of the cast who meet her in the loading bay or in the docking bay, giving a tearful goodbye, hugs and well wishes. But the great thing about it is that they leave the door open in case she ever wants to come back. Now, here are some things that I noticed. The beginning of the episode I really, really, really liked because in the first season we got these little scenes of everyone in the cafeteria, so to speak, doing things like Bortus eating challenges or just jokes they'd play on each other, very much trying to solidify the family unit of the crew, right? Showing that they're friends, that they get along with each other, and giving us the lighter side of something we never really saw much of in something like Star Trek. Here was no different. With Alara's super strength, they put her up against Isaac and his ability to, well, be a robot, and they go at it in an arm wrestling match, and she had beaten him 16 to 14 times. It was a Friday night tradition where people were betting on it. What I cracked up at the most was when Bortus looks at Alara and goes, "I have bet on you. Do not disappoint me." Just in pure Bortus fashion. That was so much fun. I was laughing out loud at that. And after Alara gets sick and decides to go back home, there's a line as they are traveling down to the planet where Gordon says, "I love this place. It just reminds me that I'm trash, that my family is trash," which I thought was interesting because it gives us a bit of insight into just who he is as a character, his backstory. Not a lot, but just a little bit to know that he's embarrassed of who he is or maybe of where he comes from. You know, I think the idea there is that he's like maybe lower middle class or just lower class trailer trash in his own mind, even though he probably isn't. But seeing something as beautiful as the city or as this planet really kind of speaks to him and you know, allows him to kind of maybe self-deprecate. But I think ultimately deep down he's very excited to see these places and to get out of where he grew up. Another thing I really enjoyed is when they go and they drop Alara off, the gravity on the planet is insane. It would crush a human in a heartbeat. And so Gordon takes an aluminum bottle and hucks it outside, and it goes splat just right off the bat, and he just laughs his ass off and they take off. You know, again, good old-fashioned Gordon humor. This is why we like the show. Another thing I really thought was funny was when they brought in the interim security chief, who is the long elephant trunk looking dude that we've seen in the previews. Didn't speak, didn't quite know what it was. I kind of thought that he was maybe possibly related to Dan, because I just got that particular vibe. And it turns out that in some respects, I'm right, at least in regards to the vibe, because it's Patrick freaking Warburton who is playing this character. And it's total Patrick Warburton. Everything he said was just hysterical. The two scenes he was in was great. And I would have loved to have seen more of him in the show. I don't think he'll be popping back in the episodes going out anymore. But I really, really thought it was pretty funny that he made the appearance and had the exchange with Bortus about his trunk being a second esophagus and how he just keeps pounding back food. That to me was just pretty damn funny. Another thing I thought was interesting was how they did the tonal shift from the lighthearted dinner discussion to the home invasion scene. When her father is talking to Canvas and they're talking about this soup, this broth that's only good when brought to a boil. He says, "Oh, why don't you, the ladle's pretty dirty. Why don't you use your hand?" And at first you're like, that's a little weird. It's just weird. John Billingsley played Canvas, did a great job. And there was just this real interesting moment where he just goes from like, ha ha ha, to, you're going to do what I say. And it's this transformation that was very fascinating. Then he pulls out a gun and forces the dad to put his hand into this boiling pot of broth. And I'm like, oh shit. Like, damn, that's pretty violent. Like, that's pretty messed up. Like they actually went that far because they took it. They took it to the level of being this home invasion from anti-vaxxers who want to get revenge for their son committing suicide. And it was just really, really, really well done because it kind of became Cape Fear all of a sudden. And it just worked. There was such a tonal shift that it just worked out really well. And I was really happy to see that we were able to get that particular scene to work as well as it did. And then, of course, the final scene in the episode, or well, I should say the second to last scene when Alara is saying her goodbyes. I got emotional watching this part because I watched the first season of the show. I love the first season of the show. Got to know these characters. I love these characters. And it was sad that we didn't get a lot more with her this season. Because remember, in the first episode of the season, she's talking about wanting to date, and she goes on that date with Dan, and they're kind of like building up to maybe she was gonna maybe find some guy or something. But then here, she ends up walking away. She ends up leaving, and that's really unfortunate. That's really unfortunate that happened. And again, you could tell on Kelly's face, because she was tearing up, that she was losing her best friend. And I think Adrian Paladaki was really crying in that moment. I think she was really sad in that moment. The emotions that were there were not acting, right? There's a moment when she goes to give Jon a hug goodbye, and when she does that, you know, she does this smile and like does like the hand over her mouth, and it was a genuine reaction to him. It was a genuine smile. When she was tearing up before leaving, that was genuine tearing up. That was genuine emotion in Halston Sage's face and everyone's face that was there. And I thought that was really great. But again, what really cracked me up was the final scene, because it was a solid goodbye to the character in a way that I thought worked out really well. She left this package on Ed's desk, and he opens it up, and inside is a jar of pickles. Just as a nice little nod to Ed, their little thing. And that hit me. Like, I laughed, and then it also, like, immediately, as soon as the wave of laughter ended, it was like kind of like, oh, she's gone. All right, here are my final thoughts on the episode as a whole. I thought that it was a good episode. I didn't care much for the season premiere, and I've been open about this, but I did feel that last week's episode and this week's episode really still solidified the Orville as being the Orville. Why I and many, many, many others love the show. With Alara leaving, it's unfortunate, but they did leave it open for her to come back. And the reason why she left is because, well, she's going to go work on another TV show. And if that fails, they leave the door open for her to return. And I'm hoping that season 3, if it gets to season 3, the ratings are a little bit iffy right now, according to some of the reports I've seen. But if it gets to season 3, I have a feeling if that show she's on fails, it will definitely amount to her coming back. Now, I don't want to be like a naysayer or a negative Nancy or anything like that, but I'm kind of, is it bad that I'm hoping? Is it bad that I'm hoping that that happens? She's part of the family. She's part of the family, part of the crew. You know, you want her back. But I do kind of hope if they do replace her, it is with Patrick Warburton's character, at least for the season. I think that'd be pretty damn funny. But anyway, the episode Home is another fantastic Orville episode. What did you guys think about it? Let me know down in the comments below. What's your favorite moment or your least favorite moment in the episode? And I'll talk to you guys later. Have yourself a great day, and peace out.